guidelines to the first official engagement in Phil Goff's 2019 mayoral campaign, Building Auckland's Future. Go crazy. My name is Jackie Clark. I am a Greyland, mother of two, a payer of rates, a voracious consumer of public amenities, a singer of songs, a sometime thespian chanteuse, and an ardent, passionate supporter of Tamaki Makaurau. And I am beyond thrilled to be the designated sober driver of the MC microphone this afternoon. Now, for those of you who don't know me, shame on you. Us get this gathering off in the proper way. We should begin with a mihi whakatau on behalf of Te Aitanga a Mahaki and Tūhoi. Please welcome to the lectern Dr. Hardy Williams, MNZE.
Te hei Māori ora. Unu hea tani tō te harakeke, kei hea te kōmako e. Kārere ki uta, kārere ki tai, ki mai ki au, hea te mea nui. Mā koe ki atu ki a koe, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata.
Now 6 years old, I broke my leg. Now I was running from my brother and his friends. I met you in the dark, you lit me up. You made me feel as though I was enough.
We danced the night away, we drank too much. I held your hair back when you were showing up.
Then you smiled over your shoulder. For a minute I was stone cold sober. I pulled you closer to my chest.
Just a few words about why I'm standing here as one of Phil's councillors. It's my huge pleasure to say how delighted I am that Phil has announced that he's standing for a further 3 years, and I'll tell you why. I've now been around for 27 years, which is quite long enough, thank you very much, in local government, so I do know a thing or two about what works when it comes to mayors. I've been deputy mayor to 2 mayors and have had the pleasure of working with Phil for 3 of further years, and I know what makes a good mayor, and Phil's got what it takes to be a good mayor. A good mayor is several things, and I'll tell you what those are. A good mayor is a passionate person about his city, and Phil is a passionate Aucklander. You know, we know that, and he's proven that.
It's a city that is an exciting place that offers us choice and opportunity. It's a city that is transforming before our very eyes. And it's a city that's growing at an unprecedented rate with all of the opportunities and the challenges that that offers to all of us. Look around our city. I don't think anybody outside of the Crane Association has counted the number of cranes on our horizon, but there's 90. And you know that's more than any single city across the United States. We've got $73 billion worth of commercial construction going on in the city. The city is absolutely booming. We've hit records in new home construction, and I want to come back to that later. And we're growing by about 30 or 40,000 extra people a year. Now, this is a message not to the MPs here, because they have already absorbed and accepted it, but to their parliamentary colleagues and their ministerial colleagues, not all of whom appreciate the full importance of our wonderful city. We are approaching 1.7 million people. In a couple of decades' time, we'll hit 2 million. We're 35% of this country's population. We're 38% of everything that it produces. And my message to Wellington is that for New Zealand to succeed, our city of Auckland has to succeed. And we want Wellington to work alongside us, not to give us special favours, but to make sure this city can be everything that it can be, and that it can contribute everything that it needs to contribute for our country to be a really great country. That's a message to Wellington. I raised my voice a little bit louder so they could hear me right down there. I want to say there's so much to be proud of in this city, particularly on a beautiful day like this. And just before I came here, I was working in my office on the 27th floor, looking out on our beautiful Gulf, our wonderful Gulf islands, looking out over the Moonga that mark our landscape, looking beyond that to the bush-covered ranges and the Waitakaris and the Hunuas. And I think when I look at that natural environment, how blessed we are to live in this city. And if I had to pick one thing that I was especially proud of that we've achieved over the last 2.5 years, it's what we have done to sustain, to restore and to enhance our environment. You know, we're in a long dry patch at the moment, but every time it rains, our wastewater overflows into our harbour and onto our beaches. And it's done that for 90 years. And it's time to fix that problem, and we are fixing it. And I want to thank all of you as Aucklanders, because when I put out a targeted rate on water quality, you came back to me 2-to-1 and said, get on and fix the problem. We don't mind paying the money, we want that problem fixed. And we will fix our beaches in 10 years instead of the 30 years that it was going to take. And 21st century Auckland will have waterways and beaches. We can be really proud of it. And this is about not just us here in this room, this is about our children and it's about our grandchildren, because they deserve a better legacy from us and we will deliver it. And then there's the question of predators. Bill Cashmore and I, 12 months ago, released 5 kiwi into the Hunuas. It was a wonderful experience. The first time the kiwis had been back on the mainland. About a month later, we found 3 of them had been killed by a ferret. So we've done something about that in the Hunuas, and we've just got the latest figures on what we've done to eradicate predators. For every 100 traps, set and tracking devices in the Hunuas, we now can't detect a single rat. That's fantastic. We've just about wiped out the stoats, the ferrets and the opossums. And there was, a few years ago, a belief that birds like the kokako would become extinct in Auckland. Beautiful sound of the kokako. You know, there's now 106 breeding pairs in the Hunuas, and that's the 5th biggest breeding population anywhere in New Zealand. We're wiping out the predators. We've made most of the Gulf Islands predator-free, and we're on the path to making Waiheke predator-free, to bring back our bush, to bring back our native birds. And that is something that our generation can be proud of, when for generations we had led those birds down the path to extinction. Kauri tree, it's the iconic tree of our nation. And we found out in the Waitakaris in the last 5 years, the kauri dieback had increased from about 9% of the trees to 18%. It had doubled, and it was threatening to annihilate the species. We have, in our environmental enhancement budget, increased the money from 3 million to 100 million to protect that iconic tree. And Councillor Holtz and I walked up the Kitty Kitty Falls track just a couple of weeks ago, because it is now safe to use a track that will not allow the spread of that disease, and that's something else to be proud of. I promised 3 years ago that we'd plant 1 million trees. Seemed like a lot of trees at the time. I had a few doubts myself. But in May of this year, I will go out personally with a number of councillors and plant that 1,000th tree. We are making Auckland greener. We are stopping erosion on our rivers and our coastline, and we are combating climate change. And when we've planted 1 million trees, we'll go on to plant several million trees more, and that will make our city a better place for generations to come. But there's something else that I'm proud of here, and I'm proud of it looking out over the audience that have come along today to share this occasion with us. I'm proud of the fact that here in Auckland, we are the 4th most multicultural city in the world. This morning I was at Japan Day. You know, there's 50,000 people going through Eden Park today to share in the performances and the cuisine of Japan. A couple of weeks ago, the year of the pig, the new year, came to an end with the Lantern Festival. We had 200,000 Aucklanders go through the Domain, the biggest multicultural festival in New Zealand. And in a couple of weeks' time, we'll have Polyfest, and we'll have Pacifica, and later in the year, we'll have Diwali. And I'm really proud that in this city of ours, we can live together with mutual respect and in harmony. And I want to say, unfortunately, that's not a view shared by everybody. Have a look at my Facebook page sometime. Think about those awful Canadians that wanted to visit our country to stir up discontent and hatred between people of different races and different faiths. And I will oppose that racism, zero tolerance to racism, and I will work as hard as I am able to make sure that we as a city can bring together people of many different backgrounds, all proud of their position as New Zealanders, but proud of their culture and heritage. And that is something that makes our city really special. So thank you everyone here today. And there's another aspect to our city that is really important to me. Having grown up in the post-war years, when we thought the most important thing, the most important ideology of New Zealand was the ideology of fairness, and I still believe that. A fair society where every child can be everything that he or she wants to be, where everybody can share in the wealth and the benefits of our society. And in this room, and I'm not going to point her out, but is the lady that cleans my office. When I go home late at night, she is there still cleaning the office. And something I promised last time, and we collectively, councillors, thank you all of you, have delivered, was the living wage. And in September, in September of this year, we will deliver the final payment to bring all of our paid employees up to that level. But we need to go further, because our cleaners don't work for council, they work as contracted people. And I want to build on what we've already achieved, so that everybody that does a hard week's work gets a wage that they can live on if they're working for council. And that's something that we're planning to do, so that will make a huge difference. There's another fairness, and everybody will have noticed it. I don't think when I was a student in this city I saw a homeless person, but today I see them daily. I see people that are sleeping out in the streets. I see people who are sleeping in cars. What Council has done is work together with 5 of our best non-government organisations in a program called Housing First. And we have, in 18 months, taken 700 people off the streets and put them into decent homes, and 85% of those people, a year later, with all the complexities of their lives and the problems in their lives, are still in the houses that we have provided. And we are providing support for Auckland City Mission to build their home ground building that's coming up on Hobson Street out of its foundations as we speak, so that we not only deal with the problem of homelessness, but the problems of addiction and mental health that cause those problems, because we are committed to a better city for everybody, and equally I'm proud of what we've achieved in those areas. One of the biggest challenges that our council faced after the 2016 elections, and it wasn't a new problem, was housing shortages and affordability. And, you know, I watched the prices going up by 15% a year. All right for me, all right for many of you here, we have our own homes, but what about our kids? How are they ever going to be able to afford a home? And I thought that one of the critical things that we needed to do was to ensure that we could increase the number of houses that we were building in our city. And I again want to acknowledge Penny Holtz and those that worked with her in the former council in creating the unitary plan. And I just got the figures through, emailed through on Friday. We have hit an all-time record in the number of new building consents that have been issued, 13,200. That's up from about 4,000 6 years ago. We have quadrupled the number of houses that we are building. And we have a record level of housing completions. And you know, 90% of those houses are within the existing urban limits. So we are creating a more compact city. That's great. It's great that house prices have stabilised. But we, Auckland Council, and central government, Phil, need to continue to work together, because there's so much more that needs to be done so that everybody has a warm, healthy, safe home to live in, and more of our young people can achieve that Kiwi dream of owning their own home. I drive through the biggest parking lot in the whole of New Zealand. It's called the Southern Motorway, and even at 6:30 in the morning it's pretty clogged up. And I looked at what had been happening, and for decades we've been underinvesting in our transport network. And we sat down, myself, the Deputy Mayor, councillors, with Phil Twyford, and we came up with a 10-year plan. Plans are great, but you've got to fund them. This plan, the Auckland ATAP, Auckland Transport Alignment Project, that's aligning central and local government. And we have put $28 billion into that program for more busways, to complete the city rail link, to get light rail up and running, to get cycleways, you know, Skypath and Seapath, and the cycleway that will come from Glen Innes all the way down to Tamaki Drive, so that people have the ability to choose between options of travel, strengthening our public transport system, opening up our city for cycleways and walkways. And I know Mike Hoskins doesn't like it, but that's going to be part of the way of the future, because you will not solve our transport problems by building more and wider motorways. We are going to transform the transport network for this city. And I think of some of the places that I used to live, like Papatoetoe and Onehunga, and you look at places like Manukau and Takapuna, Avondale, Henderson, Northcote, And there's so much that needs to be done to uplift and transform those areas, and we are starting that process. And we're starting the process of transforming the city of Auckland, the centre of the city. You know, 200,000 people live, work and study in the centre of Auckland each day. It's 20% of the whole of the city's GDP, 7% of the country's. And you wonder why it's hard to walk down Queen Street. It's because the number of pedestrians have doubled in 3 years as more people live there, more people walk around the city, more people come into work and study there, more people come as tourists. So let's transform the centre of our city. Let's make Queen Street a pedestrian wall. Let's do the same thing to High Street and Federal Street. Let's turn Victoria Street into a linear parkway. Let's build a new park down the bottom of Auckland on the harbour front so that our city is a really fantastic place to be. And we're not just talking about those things, we're budgeting for and planning, and we'll deliver those things. And there's another question too, it's about public open space. You know, hardly anybody noticed in the big budget that we put through, the 10-year budget last year, but the biggest increase was a 53% increase in funding for our public open spaces and our community facilities. A fortnight ago, Mary and I drove up to a place called Te Arai. Who knows where Te Arai is? Yes! Yes, well, the local Member of Parliament representing Rodney will know that. We're going to create a 500-hectare coastal reserve there. A fantastic place for Aucklanders to go and enjoy the coast. We're going in the Hunuas to turn the commercial forestry operation into an area that's accessible to all Aucklanders for recreation and leisure. We're going to transform the city in that way as well. Now, everything costs money, and what we need to do is to broaden our revenue base. And Ministers of Finance from both parties haven't been as sympathetic as I would have liked to the concept. For example, how about giving us back the GST you take on our rates bills? That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Another $320 million. I wouldn't have to come, Phil, so often to government saying we need more money to help with this project, because you'd be returning to money to us that was properly ours. But we're doing a whole lot more besides that. And what we've done is expanded the amount of money we're putting into our infrastructure in an unprecedented way, but we've kept our rates bill at 2.5%. You know that 2.5% a year represents the lowest rate increase of any growth city or metropolitan city in Auckland. We've spent more money where it counts. We've found efficiencies that will total $1 billion in savings, but we haven't put the burden on our ratepayers, and I'm proud of that. We did add to one of your costs, it's called the regional fuel tax, and I promised every one of you at the last election that I'd do that, because if we wanted more money out of central government, we had to have some skin in the game. We've done that, and that's another $4.3 billion that we can spend on our transport network. Now, I just want to talk briefly about something that will be coming up in the next term of council. 2021 is going to be a really special year for Auckland. And we start off 2021 with hosting the America's Cup. I had a gentleman in my office last Thursday called Patrizio Bertarelli. And you might know him, he's head of Luna Rossa. You might know him, he's chief executive of Prada. He's going to build a small boat shed at the bottom of town. It's only there for a short period of time. He's investing $50 million in it. Wow. But we will have the greatest contest for the America's Cup that any city has ever seen. We will bring vibrancy and excitement to the city. We will bring income to the city. We will create thousands of jobs. But most of all, we will showcase to the world how our city and our small country can beat yachting syndicates backed by the biggest multinationals in the most powerful countries in the world and win, because we have the technology, the skill and the commitment to do it. And that's going to be a huge year for Auckland 2021. We start the year with the America's Cup. We end up with APEC. The key leaders of the world, there's a few elections between now and then, perhaps there'll be different leaders, not saying anything there, but both of these are chances to showcase our city and our country to the world as a good place to live, to invest and to visit. There's one other thing that will be happening in that year. Well, there's lots of other things actually. There's a Rugby Women's World Cup, a Cricket Women's World Cup, but there's a thing called Te Matatini. And I want to mention that. I want to mention a group called Ngā Tumanako. Who's a Westie here? Because raise your hands and celebrate that a Western Kapahaka group beat the best of the best in New Zealand and will be hosting Te Matatini in Auckland in 2021. But it's not just about what we create for the world, it's about the sort of Auckland that all of us want to live in. The sort of Auckland where you can wake up in the morning and you have the option of a reliable and affordable public transport system. We have the option that you can bike or walk safely to work. Where you can go out in your lunch hour and sit in a great city park or civic centre for lunch. Where when you finish work, wherever you live in town, you've got the choice of scores of fantastic places to eat from every country in the world. Where on the weekend you can take your kids and your family to hike in our ranges or swim in our beaches. And Auckland, where we feel safe on the streets, where we care for our neighbours, where we feel that we are part of a community, a place where you have a choice of lifestyle, a place where my granddaughter and your grandchildren and every child have opportunities that are open to them. A city where talent and curiosities are nurtured and valued. You know, that's a fantastic vision for our city, but there are big challenges and hard decisions that have to be made in the next 3 years. None of it's easy. The challenges are immense. Across Australasia, the level of construction is so high that there is enormous pressure on the cost of new infrastructure. We've got huge challenges. Climate change. The President of the United States might not believe in it, but you can see it happening before your eyes. We've got coastal management and erosion issues, which require considered and strong responses. We've got to do something about recycling. We've been relying on just sending all our recycling to China, and they said, keep your rubbish to yourself. And we should be able to deal with it. We've got to be able to deal with pollution in our harbours. I was across on Rangitoto the other day, and I was sifting amongst the driftwood and the seaweed, and there were millions of pieces of plastic lying on the beach on Rangitoto, and hundreds of cigarette butts that people had carelessly discarded on the streets of Auckland that had washed across there. We've got to change all of that. Now, you could look at all of those problems as a politician and say, too hard, I'm out of here, there's an easier life. It's tempting, but it's not part of my makeup. As you know, I had a bit of a medical event last year, almost a year ago now. It's called a heart attack, and kept me away from work for a whole week, I think. I've had a clean bill of health given to me by the cardiologists. I'm ready to give 100% of my time, my energy and my commitment to finish the job that we have started. That's why I'm announcing today my candidacy for re-election as Mayor. We can make our city prosperous, inclusive, sustainable and vibrant, a great city for all of us to live in. Today, I'm asking you to join with me to work together to continue building Auckland's future. Thank you very much for coming along today. Thank you very much.
so much. Really appreciate you coming along. Keep up the good work.
Okay.
Yes, yep, we'll do that. I'm just doing a stand-up. Yep, sorry. Hello, Christine. So good to see you and your ladies.
Video, you want to take a photo? Okay.
I'm waiting with interest to see what the government study shows us about what the potential is to relocate the ports of Auckland from our central business district. I've expressed my view that I want to see access to the harbour and the use of the bottom of the CBD come back to the city. But that port performs a critical role for our economy, as well as being a big revenue earner for the city itself. And we have to have the necessary alternative, economic and environmentally sound alternative to its current location. As of yet, that has not been identified, and the next step needs to be to identify where a business case can be built for an alternative siting for the ports of Auckland. Until that happens, we're dealing only with theory.